She used the gift box to distract me, I tell him. She must have had the keyboard in there too. She cut the ribbon, took out the keyboard, transferred the money, and then taped the package back together. She wrapped up the keyboard in her shopping bag and slipped out when I wasn't looking. Probably went out the side door to her car. I'm telling you, she set me up. The two cops are looking at each other as if they just heard the lie of the century. Look, I tell them, she gave me the address of the apartment and told me to meet her there. How did you know about it? She tipped you off. She had to. And the address was right here, Al says, pointing at a piece of paper next to his computer. You recalculated my bill and typed your address on the bottom so I know where to send the check. I didn't do that. She did, I tell him. What were you doing here anyway? How did you know that your money had been transferred? I come back every night at 8:30 with a kid, Al says. He transfers the money for me. When it was already transferred, he knows right away. That's why I got the new computer. He operates it all the time, so I got him the kind he wanted. I figure I'd also get him a present. He's going to be 13 years old next week. I don't believe this, I say. I'm telling you the truth, and you're believing her. And I'm telling you she was straight arrow, Al answers. The best accountant I've ever had. Freelancing for me. Checking on my people. I'll tell you this much, she was a hell of a lot cheaper than you, and she gave me better service. She used to work for a big A firm. Plus, she was more than happy to run the errand for my kid's present. But now she's not coming back. You know why? You know what happened? Talk about a chicken shit organization with some pissant employees. She put a can of Pepsi in our refrigerator, and somebody in the office stole it. She told me she could work under just about any conditions, but she couldn't work with thieves. Can you believe anybody would be that cheap? Steal a goddamn can of Pepsi? Anyway, she thanked me, left the present in my office, and told me to please call somebody else the next time I need an accountant. I look around the room, and they're all staring at me in disbelief. All except the kid, whose eyes are closed as he plays the drums on his knees. I start to respond, and the cop in the bad suit takes my arm and starts walking me to the door. That's enough, he says. We got other stuff we got to do tonight besides listening to you. But you don't understand, I yell. We understand, buddy, he says. We understand it all. So there it is. Questions? Comments? Cat paws? Does? Anything? I would do does. I can't say it the way Homer does. Yes?
I have a question. Right now, I'm teaching a science fiction class, and you talked about noir as tragic realism.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if you could say something about the impact of noir on science fiction or vice versa. And I'm thinking particularly in your story,
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting that the computer, right, is the vehicle for the
Right.
for the trick.
Right, right.
Which, and I would never call your story science fiction, but there's
Right.
certainly that kind of cyber element
Right.
that's infiltrating. Maybe.
Right. I don't know. Science fiction historically has always been kept pretty separate. I mean, if you look at Black Mask, for example, you'll see crime stories, you'll see Western stories, you'll see naval stories. We see all kinds of things that roughly come out of a romance tradition, but you don't see science fiction. I think a friend of mine used to say, I think it's probably true, at least in very general terms, science fiction comes out of pastoral rather than romance, and whereas English mysteries come out of comedy, right? So sci-fi is usually about separate worlds in a galaxy far, far away, or very distant in time, or both, or what have you, and then the story is the implicit contrast, and explicit contrast between the two. So it's a very different form. I don't see. I think there are obviously a lot of people that read both, but not too many. There's not much carryover. There's a guy named Neil Barrett who used to be the general, what is they call the city manager of Austin, Texas, who writes both sci-fi and crime. But most people don't cross that line.
I guess I was thinking of, for instance, what Ridley Scott did in Blade Runner to Philip K. Dick's,
Right, okay.
So,
Yeah.
so he sort of noirs it up.
Right.
And he saw the potential noir elements in it, but it becomes, Blade Runner is this now iconic science fiction film that's also very noir-y.
Right, exactly.
But maybe there aren't tons of examples of
it. We were talking this morning about Jonathan Lethem, and Jonathan Lethem, he does sci-fi and he does crime, but every now and then, as in Gun with occasional music, you get a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you feel kind of obligated to go to L.A. to place that in L.A.?
Well, that's
not Columbia.
That's kind of part of the game because Chandler's so influential, and he lived all over Southern California, and it's that kind of writing is often associated with LA. And I tell my students it's good to write about LA if you can, because it's easier to get book sales and movie sales because there's a huge audience there that likes to read about themselves, right? Everywhere, So if you write about Columbia or St. Louis, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. So I generally write about LA because, I don't know, Charles Willeford moved to Miami. He said he wanted to do crime fiction, so he went where the crime was. But there's still enough left in Southern California.
Is Elroy still in Kansas City? Or
no, Elroy moved from Kansas City to the Bay Area with Helen Canode when he was married to Helen Canode. And then they split amicably. He basically gave her everything on the planet, and they're still close friends, etc. But he's just too whacked out to live with anybody, or was. So now he's back in Los Angeles, and he actually lives. He lives sort of east of Hancock Park, and the last place I would live if I had James Elroy's sales. But he grew up in Hancock Park, in the Hancock Park area, and used to window peep at the houses of his female classmates from high school. And so it's like going home for him. Hopefully he's not peeping and sniffing their underwear and doing all the things that he did when he was in high school. But that's where he is now. Yeah, and he looks like a guy right out of the Junior Chamber of Commerce, with loud sport coats and everything. It's really done a major change in his life. I met him when he was married to the professional woman in New York. I don't know if she was a stockbroker, investment banker or something. He was dressing in like tennis togs. He looked like something out of The Great Gatsby, but he changes as his life changes. Fascinating man. Very nice man too. Hell of a writer. The Hilliger Curse just out. If you're a James Elroy fan, another book about his life. It's very different than My Dark Places. And a lot of people don't like it, but I think they don't like it just because it's very different. It's much more psychological and reflective rather than sort of the narrative history that you get in My Dark Places.
Are there international writers who have picked up noir?
Oh yeah. There are a lot. I don't really know them as well as I should. My favorite right now is, and I haven't read the novels, just seen the TV movies with Kenneth Branagh, and it's called Wallander. It's a guy like right out of Ingmar Bergman as a detective in Sweden, and in fact the novelist's wife is Ingmar Bergman's daughter, so he gets it all honestly. But you see these beautiful sweeping landscapes, and there's like nothing there, no color, nothing. Welcome to Sweden in the summer. They're very good. They're very good. As I said, I've read the novels. I like them better than the Stieg Larsson stuff. I like the Branagh version. Branagh's a great actor. It's weird though, because everybody in the movie is putatively Swedish, but they all speak British English. And I guess there's something kind of anxiety laden about British English, so it works anyway.
I also wanted to ask you, this noir seems very Guy. So are there female noir writers?
Yeah,
The
there
gender?
are, but not a whole lot. There's a woman named April Smith, who was an old screenwriter, so who I like very much. There's a woman who's largely retired now, named Sandra Scopatone, who she moved out on Long Island. She wrote initially under the name Jack Early, and one of her books was made into a fairly decent movie. Though it's set in, I think it's San Francisco, when it's actually set in New York. They love to do that, you know. Lawrence Block has the worst luck of all. There's a novel called 8 Million Ways to Die, which is about New York, so they set it in California. So he has his Cozy series features a Jewish bookseller named Bernie Rodenbar. So they make this into a movie, and they star Whoopi Goldberg as Bernie Rodenbar, change her name to Bernice, and then that's the way they can call her Bernice. Faulkner said, you just take the money. You know, when you've sold it to Hollywood, it's not yours anymore. Forget it, and just let it go. Stop worrying about it. But, anything else? Thanks again for coming. I really enjoyed it, and I really appreciate your being